so much for joining us. I'm Rafał Dębę, and I'm representing the LGBT plus Diamonds Awards, organized by NatWest Poland and ABSL. This is an initiative that promotes best practices and exceptional businesses, employee-led networks, non-governmental organizations, and individuals that supports the LGBT plus community at workplace and beyond. And the webinar is also part of the Working Together initiative by ABSL. By ABSL. If you could, Kasiu, switch the slides to the next one. Oh, thank you. This Working Together initiative is partnered by BAT Digital Business Solution and CT, but this particular webinar has some amazing business and non-governmental partners. It's open for business, ISS, BNY Mellon, and Microsoft. But let me start with some technical info. If you have any questions, please use chat to ask them. We will have a Q&A session at the end. During the Q&A session, you will be also able to raise your hand and ask your the question yourself. Until then, we would appreciate you remain on mute and with your camera off so we can all see clearly the panelists. So thank you so much for that. And many thanks also to Katarzyna Targoszyńska and ABSL for their organizational support and making this webinar happen. But finally, I'm very happy that we have a chance to deep dive into one of the elements of building inclusive work environments with amazing panelists joining us today for the webinar LGBT plus inclusion in the workplace. How can the economic case influence the human perspective? So without further ado, let me introduce our wonderful host and the panelists. George Perlov is head of programs at Open for Business. He was the lead author of the organization's report from last year, The Economic Case for LGBTQ plus Inclusion in Central and Eastern Europe, Hungary, Poland, Romania, and Ukraine, and also served as interim executive director. He's an American social change consultant and lives with his husband in Berlin. Thank you so much, George, for joining us. I'd like to also welcome panelists. Thank you so much for your precious time. Let me start with Ingrid Sivakova, head of ISS Hub in Warsaw, and People and Culture Director in ISS, the place to be you. Passionate about diversity, inclusion, belonging, striving to create a place when everybody belongs and can be yourself. Moved to Poland a year and a half ago from Slovakia, living with her husband and teenage son in Warsaw. Welcome. Paulina Nozdryn-Płotnicka, senior HR business partner and Poland HR lead, has been working at BNY Mellon Poland since 2017, driving diversity, equity, and inclusion as an ally, and partner for employee resource groups, attending and organizing internal and external events. Living in Wrocław, by the way, one of my favorite cities, with her husband and 2 sons. And Estera Kot, senior program manager at GLEAM and GLEAM lead at Microsoft. GLEAM stands for Global LGBTQIA plus Employees and Allies, if that's not obvious. So Estera specializes in big data technologies and artificial intelligence. And additionally, she runs the efforts towards bigger diversity, inclusion, equality, and ethical usage of new technologies. Estera and her wife are on the way to relocate to Microsoft's headquarters, Redmond, in Washington. Now that I know that, you can expect me knocking your door at one point. Thank you again so much for having time for the panelists, and the floor is yours, George.
Hello, everyone. Good to be here. Thank you, Rafał, and welcome to our panelists, and to everyone who's here. Thank you for making the time today. I know it's a busy day and very busy getting into the holidays, so thank you again for making that time. We're going to have a really interesting panel today. I will first start with a little bit of background on the report and some of the work that Open for Business has done in Poland, and talk a little bit about that just to set the context. But before we do that, we actually have a couple of questions for you. And if you wouldn't mind taking out your mobile phone, or handy as we call them here in Germany, and Rafael is demonstrating, and take a picture of that QR code, which will send you to the Menti site, and you will see these two questions in front of you. One is, when making a decision to join your current organization, did you consider if it is an inclusive employer? That's an easy one of yes or no kind of question. And the second one is, in one or two words, how would you describe your company's efforts to support LGBT inclusion in Poland? So basically give your company a rating, a report card on how they're doing in a word or two. Whether you think that they're doing a great job, whether you think they need improvement, whether you think they're a leader, whatever the couple of words might be, and we'll see those words as well. But while you're doing that, and while the magic of Menti is counting all of these responses, I'm going to move forward and just give a little background on Open for Business and the report we did and how this affects your work. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So Open for Business is, come back. Open for Business is a London-based organization. It's been around for about 7 years, and we basically make the business case for LGBT inclusion. We're a coalition of 35 plus global organizations. If your organization is not part of our coalition, maybe we should have a conversation about that. And what we do is a lot of research and reporting, and then we actually have local programs based in Poland, based in the Caribbean, and in Kenya, in Africa. And my colleagues, Lucas Ankiewicz and Maciej Koros, are helping us in our work in Warsaw and have been coordinating a lot of our activities there. And again, if you would like to be connected with them, we can tell you more about our work. But the big thing that we did, and this was very exciting for me to do this report, was launch this last year in Poland and in the three other countries where we worked, and at the European Union level as well. We had Commissioner Dalli as a guest speaker, the EU Commissioner for Inclusion was our guest speaker there. But we had fantastic events in all four, virtual events in all four capitals when we launched this report. And I think some of you may already know a little bit about it, so I'll just go through some of the highlights quickly and talk about some other ways that we see that companies can take action on LGBT inclusivity. Next slide. So I think the biggest finding from this report was really the economic cost to Poland about what LGBT discrimination is costing the country. And the two factors that we looked at were economic discrimination, so the fact of what differences there might be between queer people, and I use the word queer interchangeably with LGBTQ just because it's faster. But the differences in pay and what their ability to show up at work is like. And secondly, in terms of health condition inequality. So that typically refers to depression rates, which are much higher for LGBT people, and HIV rates, which are also tend to be much higher. And we saw that what this costs Poland is somewhere between 4.6 billion to 9.5 billion zloty. And I think actual estimates probably would be even higher than that, but this is what we could at least capture. Next slide. And what we see, interestingly, is that companies that take action and say something about LGBT inclusion or to show that they have a non-discrimination policy ultimately do better economically, financially, than companies that don't. And the data on the left is from our global reporting, but on the right we also looked at the Warsaw Stock Exchange indices among a number of companies, and we again saw that companies that had some sort of statement about anti-discrimination tended to perform better economically than those that did not. Next slide, please. We also look at cities, and Open for Business does an annual cities report, or every 2 years. We did it and launched this year's report in June. And here you'll see that there's a really strong correlation between innovation and cities and LGBT inclusion. So that the cities that are more LGBT inclusive tend to be much more innovative. And I think you get that idea pretty easily. And these are just to give you a sense of the Central and Eastern European cities. We found, overall, those titles, those cities that are in red have actually declined since our report in 2020. So you see that Warsaw and Wrocław also have declined. And even though, we know that these cities have very progressive mayors and governments in them, a lot of this is really being dictated by some of the national policy that happens at the national level. So next slide, please. And then we also did a survey of our report of people involved with the human resources in the country. And this was a relatively small sample, I think of about 50 or 75 people who are responsible for hiring in Poland. But we saw that overall, we're very optimistic because I think Polish companies, and compared to the other countries in the report, actually were much more committed and dedicated. So 57% were extremely committed or committed to having a diverse and inclusive workforce. 31% believe their commitment has grown over the last 2 years. 65% consider them to be on par with the general current level of social engagement. And 20%, this is coming back to the point I made before, advertise the commitment to LGBT people in their external job postings. So we see that there's definitely room for growth in that last point there, but overall a very positive response in Poland. Next slide. And this was also a very interesting piece of data from LinkedIn and the World Bank, where we looked at what we call jobs of the future. And those are jobs in technology, finance, and other areas where you really need skilled laborers. And what we see happening in Poland is that Poland is losing a lot of jobs to, as you well know, to a lot of Western European countries, and gaining people from places that are less open and inclusive. And this GBTR number is a rating of how open and welcoming these countries are for LGBTQ people. And you can see, you're losing people to much higher levels of LGBT inclusion, to countries that have higher levels of LGBT inclusion. And you're gaining more people from countries that have typically less LGBT inclusion. So this was what the shift is happening in Poland. Next slide, please. And one of the things, we are all about companies taking action. And this is some data collected by BCG. And I think it's really helpful for companies to take a look at this to see what kind of activities companies can be taking internally. Do you have an anti-discrimination policy? Is there a public statement by your CEO? Do you have some leadership or committee responsible for diversity? Are there some, if say there's a crisis, do you have, are you quick to come to interventions on these things? Do you survey to your employees to see how well you're doing? Do you allow same-sex partners to have appropriate health coverage? Do you publish data about your gaps and your progress? How do you promote people? Are there bias-free evaluation methods? And are there goals and KPIs that you put against having greater diversity in your company? And do you do trainings internally about bias awareness? So these are some things that we think are really important for companies to be doing internally. Next slide. And then we've published a report called Channels of Influence, where we also talk about what companies can be doing externally. So here, starting from the left, the value chain, which is like your supply chain. Are you requiring, your suppliers to have some sort of policy about diversity and inclusion as part of your contracts with them? Financial partners, where are you investing? Are you making investments that are helping support LGBT inclusion? public policy, are you able to speak out on these issues with elected officials, policymakers, regulators, human rights institutions? How much are you willing to take a stance and speak out? Civil society, how much are you supporting NGOs in the country? I know that many, we've met with a number of the NGOs operating in Poland that support the LGBT community. And as you know, these are tiny organizations that are trying to do a lot of work. So how much is your company helping them and supporting them? And lastly, industrial bodies, how much are you reaching out to the trade associations and industry associations, the chambers of commerce, the groups like that your company is affiliated with, and bringing up the idea of LGBT inclusion as part of business practice? So that just gives you a little bit of sense of our report and some of the activities that we're trying to move forward in Poland. Next slide, please. So now we get to see the Menti responses. Okay, so here's a great, we asked the first question about whether when you joined your current organization, did you consider it to be an inclusive employer? And that's great to see that so many of you did do some research to find that out. So that's great to see. Thank you for that. And the second answer, in 1 or 2 words, how would you describe your company's efforts to support LGBT? Okay, going the right direction. We can always do more. Newbies, we are leaders. Great job. Minimal yet present. Medium, we can always do more. It could be better. Early stage. Open but not advanced. Yeah, so interesting, these responses. I think you see it's a pretty diverse list of responses here. So I think that gives us a good sense of who you are. And now, I'd love to come to to my colleagues and who are on the panel and just start our conversation. And I think, I was talking more about the economic case before, and economies, as we know, are based on businesses, and businesses are based on people. And I think that's really what we're talking about here, and that companies have the power to really work with people and support people and bring people up in these areas. So I'm very curious to hear a little bit more about that. So the first question I have is really about, where is your company? I know I talked about what companies can be doing internally and externally, but where is your company on its journey to greater LGBTQ inclusion, both internally and externally in Poland? So I guess we can start with Ingrid, if you're ready for that.
Yeah, happy to take this question. Thank you very much, George. I think ISS is a company operating globally, which is an advantage and maybe a disadvantage as well. So it's really always to be in the big company. You can learn a lot from abroad, but sometimes it's not so easy to shift or to change the direction. So I think we are progressing quite well, but we always can do more. And I would never be able to say that we have done enough, to be honest. I think we always can do more. We have our employee value proposition stating, as Rafael already mentioned, a place to be you. And this is this is our core value. This is in our genes. We are a people company. We do not produce cars or any goods. We are delivering service to people by our people. So it's always around people. So in this a place to be you, this employee value proposition has 3 parts: be who you are, become what you want, and be part of something bigger. And you can probably sense in that it's really our core belief that we really believe in authenticity, and that everybody should be himself, herself. So really be open who you want to be. ISS is operating in 30 countries, which, as I said, can make it easier and make it a little bit more difficult, because we have some challenging countries. Poland is a bit challenging, but there are still some countries where it can be even more. So it's not always easy to operate in all these markets and really be true to all the values we always can be true to our values inside of the company. So we have something where we call our offices and our sites where we are operating that they have LGBTQ plus embassy status. So everybody is welcome. And if we cannot change all the globe, everything, we at least try to change whatever we can within our premises. So this is something what we really stand for. We are operating on customer sites as well, and we have more than 40,000 customer sites outside of our company. So again, it is our duty to try to influence in the positive direction, even the outside world, not only us, but even the customers and the companies which are operating somewhere else. We have 5 pillars of diversity and inclusion in ISS, whether it's on generation and age, whether it's on ethnicity and race, whether it's on gender balance, whether it's on abilities, because we do not call it disabilities, we call it abilities, or whether it's on pride. So we do not call one of these employee resource group LGBTQ+, but we call that pride, because we try to pay a lot of attention on inclusive language as well. And it's not always easy having so many languages spoken. In ISS, we have 130 languages spoken. So it's not easy to speak always about LGBTQ+, and somebody is missing a letter or character there, and they are then confused and they do not rather use it at all. So that's why we say, like, no, for us, it's pride. So we have pride employee resource group, which has the global mandate, but we are trying always to focus not only on the present, but on the future as well. George, as you mentioned, it is a clear correlation on economic impact, on innovation, but even for the future. And we have combined a lot of these diversity and inclusion pillars to gather the data. And there were some interesting outcomes coming out of that. Because if you take the millennials are now around 43% of the global workforce. In millennials, you can find 9.1% of LGBTQ+ people. But the Generation Z is coming, and we have still only 5% of the Generation Z in the workforce, so really small amount, but here it's already 15.9% of LGBTQ+ people coming in. So there is a clear shift in generation, and what we experience now will be even more a topic for discussion for the future, because this is where it is heading into. And even within the LGBTQ+ or the pride, we see some movements. So it's we sometimes call it the pride will be more diverse even within itself, because the bisexuality is growing. So it's really enormous growth from 22 to 57% within the LGBTQ+. And the gay community is coming down in the LGBTQ+. So there are movements even within within this pride community. So it's really something we want to focus on, and this is something really interesting actually, because this is then creating all these innovation, open-mindedness, economic impact, and everything around that. So I think, yes, we are doing a lot, but answering your question, George, I think we still can do more.
Wonderful, thank you, and really interesting the points that you've raised about, the generational shift and the dynamism that's going on in companies because of these issues that you're working with internally. So great to hear that. By the way, anyone, if you have questions for any of the panelists or me, or feel free to start putting them in the chat. We will come to them after the discussion. But let me go to Estera next. And Estera, I know you got very involved in this after a very interesting experience at Microsoft from an external request. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about that, and then about what Microsoft is doing.
Yes, happy to share that. So Microsoft is a technological company. We deliver Windows, Xbox, Office, for sure, either you are using or at minimum you heard about those products. And we also develop and working on the cloud and AI technologies. I mean, a couple of blocks, like multiple blocks that can be used to build innovations, build a solution. So imagine Lego blocks, and each of the AI model can be used as just one single Lego block. And some time ago, I was working as a cloud solution architect, so my job was to design, architect the solution. So I got the request to prepare solution technology that is going to recognize LGBT people from videos and from photos. And that request, that question came from the customers from the single customer through the partner that was related to the our main conservative party. So just quickly, I realized that like the question why someone wants to use it, and we can just deduct why. But the answer was that using any of our technology against any people should be just forbidden. But we can't forbid using our technology because many times we don't know how our users are, what they are doing with those single blocks. But in that case, we as a group of leaders at Microsoft, we decided that Microsoft is not going to work on those projects, solutions, even knowing that we waste money. We may also lose some customers, but we want to be sure that whatever our partners, customers are producing is used to build the world, because our mission is to empower every person, every organization to achieve more, not to discriminate, to marginalize. So because we represent different companies and some of us are producing goods, some services, my ask would be just whatever we produce, we must be sure and we must prevent using our new technologies to be used in an ethical way. So we can apply frameworks, we can apply rules, or just in such a single particular situation, be vocal and just say no, that it's unethical. Mm-hmm. The end of that story was that that company, they didn't reflect, just that. And once I raised that, are you really going to implement such a way? Because I will not help you, but you will find another person that for sure will. But are you sure about the consequences? The result was that they started internal discussion and they started to train all people on board with being more inclusive and even not laughing about detecting people from photos, from images. Wow. So yeah, that is the story. And what Microsoft is doing globally, we are doing a lot. Our CEO is very explicit about supporting LGBT community, and globally, yes, Microsoft is very vocal about it. But we have to look at what different countries are doing, and Microsoft has specific organization within a couple of countries, and as Ingrid said, we also had some difficult countries, and we right now can observe what is happening with our championship in Qatar. But let's look what we are doing here in Poland. So we have a GLEAM community, so that is the network for LGBTQI+ people. That is a place where everyone can, despite the sex, gender preferences, that is just a place, a group of people that can support each other in everything. And what we are doing, we are meeting weekly, bi-weekly, and also having a tradition around that. Each time, if you have a question or you need the support, you are writing a hashtag quick help, and then you are asking other people for help. Just that. We are sharing just one Teams chat and can support each other during entire day.
Wonderful, wonderful. it's interesting just hearing what you're talking about, that story. It's the second time I've heard this story, and it still gives me chills to think that a company would approach Microsoft about doing something so unbelievable, really. So thank you for sharing with us, and that, you know, what's of the dangers that are out there in the world. But I think what I heard from both you and Ingrid so far is the power we have with customers, with clients, you know, that you can be an influence, you know, and that here you had to really stand by your guns, as we say, and say, we're not going to do this. And I think what Ingrid was saying before was also interesting about, you know, how you can, because you work with so many clients and developing projects and products for them, what you can be, you know, you can be sharing good example. Anyway, on that, I'd love to hear what's going on with you, Paulina, and the work at BNY Mellon, which is in a totally different sector as well, and one that tends to be very conservative, as we know. So tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yes, definitely it's a journey for BNY Mellon, and at the moment we are also facing something that is a culture journey for us. But I think for all of us, I mean, Ingrid, Estera, and myself, I am representing, let's say, a different company from the different sector, because this is a financial sector, and in Poland, it's within the BPO shared service sector. I think the greatest asset for all of our companies is that we can leverage and build on the great examples and the culture of international company, or of great scale international company. So it's you know, if we look at the Polish labor market, then we definitely might say that it's slightly different if we compare with smaller Poland located lower scale, let's say, companies than with the international ones. But this is kind of, you know, a side note. So as BNY Mellon globally, we have definitely all of the resources that you just described at your slide, George. So it was great to see that, you know, globally, we are just, you know, we have a great CEO who is just expressing our core values and behaviors. And as a company, we also introduced something that Ingrid and Estera mentioned, is a purpose. We are right now a purpose-driven growth agenda company with the purpose to power individuals and institutions to succeed across the financial world. So even at the company statement, it's not only about commercials, but it's also about individuals. And I think, Estera and Ingrid, you said that you know, the generic statement for all of our companies is that you can be yourself at the workplace. And that's the most important. No matter how you call the statement of your company, this is basically a core one. So at BNY Mellon globally, we also have some 4 values that we need to implement and we need to follow. And one of them is strengthen diversity. So it has been implemented also as part of the annual performance management process. So all of the individuals working at each of the locations across the globe at BNY Mellon, we are assessed not only against the business result goals, but also against the values and how we are basically behaving. So it's quite important for me as the HR person as well, and as the HR professional, that these core values, including the strength and diversity, is embedded into all of the HR processes, like sourcing the candidates, like recruiting, like assessing the people throughout the day performance, like deciding on their promotion, etc., etc. So that's extremely important. And of course, how we are doing that on daily basis. Of course, the most important is how we are embedding these values and behaviors into practice. And I would share with, I could basically share with you a lot of examples from anything what we are doing globally, regionally, and also in Poland. But I hope we can just, you know, can share that during the discussion. I would also say that we have the same employee resource groups. So this is our kind of core community that is also implementing and driving the DEI strategy, especially also for the LGBTQ strategy pillar that we have. And in Poland specifically, we are calling this group PRISM. So again, coming to I think what Estera and Ingrid just said. So again, DEI for us, this is a DEI strategy. It's not only the LGBTQ strategic pillar, but it's basically all of the activities that we are doing. Yeah, George, coming back to you.
Thank you so much. No, it's interesting. I was going to ask about successes and challenges, but I think, I think people already have a sense that your companies are pretty successful in these areas, but I'd love to talk about challenges more. Where have, issues come up around policy and programs, and maybe even around, we were talking before about intersectionality. People might say, oh, why, so many times we hear, and I know especially in Polish society, why is the LGBT community special? We hear some of things like that. And I'm just curious what kind of more of challenges you've had and how you've reacted to them in the community, in your companies, what kind of things you've done to address those challenges. So let me maybe start with Estera this time, if you want to give us some thoughts.
Happy to share challenges, as there are multiple, and one of them is that I saw on the slide that you, George, presented, that Tallinn is a city that is open for business, BBB, and Warsaw is somewhere at the end. So we have a big development center in Estonia, in Tallinn, and whatever there is happening regarding to LGBT, a lot of people joins. And when I started to shape GLEAM in Poland, I was wondering how to transition the lessons learned from them to our city. It looks that similar universities, more or less similar mindset, global corporation. Why not? We can't change those rules. Let's try. And it turned out that the ecosystem of the company, that in Estonia, most of the people who are working there are developers working on products, and they are not so customer facing. And it's making to be more open internally but also externally. And here I realized that, first time we officially joined the Pride Parade as a group of 70 people. That was huge because we started from 3 people. And I was surprised that not so many board members joined. And then why critical managers are not joining, because I think that younger people are just specialists, let's name them that way, are looking at the managers. If the manager is joining, they are higher probability to join. And it turns that it's not the way, because of the specific of the roles, many times being customer facing, and those customers came from universities, also from government, also from different companies, but people are not so happy to be so open, especially externally. Internally, yes, but then we can hear a lot of, exactly as you said, George, cases when I hear that why we are so vocal, why we are showing pictures from the parade on the screens, why are we so loud about it? And then what we are doing, we are even more louder, because then we have to push more on helping those people getting used to true understanding, because what we would like to achieve is just understanding. We don't want to push to accept. We want to be just respected as a community, and as we are open to hear and open for different religions, would like to be that other people are open to understand us, what we came from, what are our challenges. That's why the path we have chosen is providing trainings as much as possible, as many as possible. So just helping to ensure that our experience is shared across the organization here, but also within the CE region.
That's great. That's great. And it's wonderful. I think I hear a little bit here about benchmarking against, different countries, where you're operating as well, and that both you can see how you're doing against what they're doing, but also learn from some of the examples of what they've been doing and the programs that they're developing in other countries as well. So fantastic to hear that. Paulina, what's your thoughts on this? On challenges?
Yeah, so when it comes to the challenges, definitely the COVID-19 pandemic time was a challenge itself. Why was that? Because all of the activities were done mainly virtually. And of course, to engage employees, to engage basically everybody, right? But especially the young employees into the virtual panel discussions or virtual events, it's also well, an additional effort for the employer, let's put it this way. So if we look, for example, at this year Equality March in Wrocław, then if we compare the participant ratio, it was twice as many than before. So it was it only shows that the COVID pandemic was a challenge and wasn't basically helping. Right now, after pandemic, the employer is basically, and this is also a trend across the labor market, we are all hit by the attrition ratios at this moment of time. So even if you are, encouraging people to join the EBRG groups, the resource groups, then the attrition might also hit the engagement that we are doing on a regular basis. So you need to search regularly and for a new allies, active allies, and this is the ongoing commitment from the employer side. So I would say that from as the HR person, I can see these two challenges as the main ones.
Right. So these are more external in some ways, but how they affect the work that's been going on
Exactly.
for LGBT employees, I think it affects them most. Interesting. And Ingrid, how about from your side?
I think I can only echo what Estera and Paulina said, because the same like what Estera mentioned. I think we may have two challenges here. One being some markets. As said, there are some markets which are more difficult than the others. And then we have the customers. And as really having 40,000 customer sites, you definitely have some sites which are more conservative in this respect. So you will always find that. But being true to your values and influencing in the right direction is the way we want to take here. And I would not call it fight, but it is the fight we want to go for, because this is something which we really want to stand for. And then, as Paulina mentioned, with the COVID, I think everything bad can be good for something else. So at least now, actually, after the COVID, we can be even more here for the people who need us, because Georgia, as you mentioned, that there is a high level of depression and so on. So now it's a time where we can really show we care. So it was during the COVID, definitely it was the same, but now we can really be here in present in for these people, and in person for people who need help. So a little bit to catch up on something which was stopped or slowed down during the COVID. So I think we share the same challenges across all the companies, and let's them face it. So challenges are here to be overcome.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for that. I'm curious too, I'll throw this question out to all of you. We've heard in some countries and in Poland as well, that when you have government clients and you're working in a country where the government, has not the best policies for LGBT people, to say the least, that it often is hard for you. There's sometimes a feeling, oh, we can't really speak out because the government is our client, and we work with them closely. I'm just curious if that's been your experience at all, and how you might have dealt with that. If there's any experiences you can talk about. Anyone can jump in on that.
Maybe if if I can take this one.
Mm-hmm.
I think here maybe we have the strength of the global company, which is helping us. So it's easier, and I recognize that as really a huge advantage for us. It's easier for us to be strict. Maybe local companies may have some more doubts, but we are the global company who can stand for the values, for our values. So whether it will be the Polish government, to be honest, we have our values, and yeah, that's it. Full stop.
That's fantastic.
I can add a very similar experience. Like, diversity and inclusion is in our DNA, and even if we are working with a public sector government clients, we are taking the risk, but it's about leadership and courage. That yes, we are going to stand up with our values, be vocal about them, and we are happy to provide you with any service that you would like to experience with our technology, but will not change our heart.
That's great.
And I can basically add to that as said at the very beginning, international approach is our greatest asset. So if I am asked, why is that in Poland, and what we can basically do to commend this at least, then my simple answer is that Poland is still part of the European Union. Poland is still part of the international contracts that we have globally. I mean, with different companies, but also between different countries, right? All of the, even our constitution, it stands for the equality, diversity, and inclusion as well, no matter what is the reason behind this. So that would be my simple answer. And governments come and go, but let's say the bases stay forever. And the issue might be only with the interpretation. So it's really up to us. How do we want to approach this?
That's excellent. Great. I'd love to open it up to the audience. If anyone, I think we have a choice. If you want to unmute yourself and just jump in with a question to the panel, that would be great. We also have some questions we received beforehand, which we can go to, but anyone from the audience who would like to ask a question of the panelists here today. Okay, we thought, yes?
Yes, let me start, because there was one question that we actually received from a few people, a similar question. So let me put it in one sentence. It's one of the pre-submitted questions. Well, basically the question is if there is any significant difference in what your organizations are doing in Poland regarding the LGBT plus inclusion versus in other European countries.
We've heard a little bit about that already, but yeah, maybe talk about some of the things you're trying to implement here, or have trouble perhaps implementing in Poland.
Maybe I can pick up this question. So I looked also at the different documents that we receive as a PRISM, but also as a site from different regions, like the PRISM, of course, also does their activities in EMEA region, in LATAM, in US, in APAC. So if I look at the EMEA examples, then they have an example of, let's call it this way, Pride in London 15th anniversary march. What is maybe not, what is the difference is basically, first of all, the scale. This is obvious for everybody, but also kind of history. So they can share that this is their 15th anniversary of doing this. So if I can count correctly, then if we if we have started in Poland in 1970s, then that would be our 50th anniversary right now. We obviously all know, our history where we were in 70s in Poland. So this is the main difference, right? If I can compare Poland activities with the UK, for example, they are also sharing that they have marches in Manchester, in Poole, and in all other cities. So it's not only London. And I'm great to see that small towns or smaller cities that they are also doing the equality marches right now. So it's not only Warsaw, it's not only Wrocław, but it's also Słubice right now. It's also Szczecin. So there are also town included in the activities. Some of the other example is a Queer Britain Museum visit. What a lovely visit, and what a lovely example of the activity. I would love to have such an event in Poland, but obviously it's not possible at this moment of time, right? So it only shows that Poland is at the, let's say, beginning of the journey. It's kind of journey that we will get there at some point of time, but we really need time.
Right.
Well, I do have to say, just to comment on that, sorry about Rafael, I was just going to say, my experience coming to the Diamond Awards was really something. And I think, as as an American, people and queer and Jewish people will often say to me, "Oh my God, you went to Poland? How scary was that?" And I tell them about going to the Diamond Awards and what a wonderful experience we had there. So I think I think there's much more. I think that's possible, right? For Poland and the future going forward. Rafael, sorry.
Just let me add that soon we will all have the possibility of having this lovely experience of visiting a queer museum in Poland, because the oldest LGBT plus NGO just announced that they received a grant to create the first queer museum in Warsaw.
That's perfect.
It will be in the city center, so we're looking forward to it.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Okay. Perfect. And sorry?
I was just going to say, any other comment, anyone last comments here? I know we're getting close to time, but Ingrid or Estera had anything to add to the last point?
I think Paulina kind of summarized it really nicely, because my feeling is a little bit that we are trying to catch up in Poland. So catch up on the progress other countries have already done. And in the global companies, we can be a little bit faster. So again, this is our advantage, because whether it's, for example, we are implementing trans policy from Australia, or we are implementing parental leave policy from UK, where the LGBT or the Pride employee resource group had really a great say in that one, or whether it's menopause policy from UK. So we are implementing these things which can really be easily transferred into Poland. I do not see still too much what we can transfer from Poland to abroad. So I think this ripple effect, it's really nice to see that it's starting. We need to be a little bit maybe faster on that one, but the ripple effect is here already. So it's something is happening, and whether to take the best practices from abroad or to export the best practices doesn't matter at the end. So it's about having the best in place. So it doesn't matter whether it's imported or exported.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, maybe that's an ambition for Poland then, that can be the country that will be exporting its inclusive policies to other countries in the coming years. Estera, last word?
I really like what Paulina and Ingrid shared. From my side, we started with explaining what LGBT each letter means. And now there is one practice that we can export. That is, we started the NVC training, nonviolent communication, that is really not attached to LGBT community. It's just a practice of using a language in a very inclusive, non-violent way. And we started as a part of our training just to prepare people to discuss and catch why they are scared about discussing, make them more aware. And I think that practice, like regardless to industries, group of people can be exported. And in Poland, we have a lot of specialist expert in NVC. I know that it was invented in, like described in the US by Marshall Rosenberg, but still we have very good experts here.
That's great. That's great. No, there's a lot. I mean, there's a huge amount I think that Poland can build from now. And I have to say, as an outsider, I just see a huge amount of potential and opportunity. And I think that things will change very soon. And I know we at Open for Business are really working with businesses to have more of these experiences, share more, talk more on some of those more external points. And so if there's any way, we can help you and help other companies come together on that, that would be great. But today was very interesting conversation. Thank you all. Thank you, Rafał and Kasia, for organizing this. I was going to say, I mean, the point about the power of being an international company in Poland and what that affords you. The fact that you're all, working with customers and how you can influence your customers, and then how you can be learning from your international partners and bringing those conversations to and policies to what you're doing in the market. I think is fantastic. So I'm very excited. I'm very optimistic about the work that's going on in Poland, and that more that these discriminatory policies will start to go away and more open policies will come, because we know that there's an economic answer, and that the more that we can be open, the more economic success the country will have. Anyway, I'll turn it back to Rafał. Any last comments or questions or thoughts?
Just again wanted to thank you all. Thank you to all the audience to find time and join us. Thank you, George, so much. Thank you, Ingrid, Paulina, Estera. I loved the very specific examples that you gave, but also I really literally my heart was melting when you were sharing how much you stand for the values that you believe in, and this is really so important these days. That's for sure. Again, thank you so much. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Great. And this will be recorded. Thank you, right, Rafał? It has been recorded, so we can share it, right?
It has been recorded. We will be able to share it with a follow-up email.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks
Have a good
a lot for the
afternoon.
invite.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.